fishing for sea bass from the shore, my first choice of lure would always be plugs. However, there are times when plugs are just not suitable. For me, those times are when there is a surface weed problem, and anything with a hook exposed, including surface plugs, are frustratingly hopeless. An area I fish has a surface weed problem at certain times of the year, with a bloom of thongweed, otherwise known as spaghetti weed. This weed sits on the surface in either great clumps or a few strands you cannot see, and of course, as soon as the plug hits it, the hooks pick it up. Also, some areas I like to fish have seagrass exposed at low water, and channeled rackweed that sits on the surface when the tide floods in. Weedless lures and the weedless setup enable the fishing of these areas with ease, and this video is about fishing for bass from the shore using the weedless setup. The weedless soft plastic I'm using is a Fish Arrow J 5-inch SW, and when I was looking for a suitable weedless lure, I wanted a lure that cast very well but also had some action just by cranking it in rather than having to impart the action by using the rod tip. Now, I experimented with a lot of weedless lures, but when I came across this one, it ticked both the boxes. It cast absolutely brilliantly, even into a breeze, which with other weedless lures I found you couldn't really get any distance, and of course the more distance you can get, the more ground you can cover. And this has got the word arrow in it, and it does cast like an arrow. It stays as straight as an arrow when you cast it, and it's absolutely fantastic the distance you can get with it, and I can cast as well with this as most of the plugs that I use. So it ticked that box. Now the other thing, it has got action when just by cranking it in, and what the action is, and hopefully I'll better show you that later, is like a slalom action where it goes through the water. This is just on a slow retrieve. You don't need to retrieve it in quickly, or just a slow to medium retrieve. It has a slalom action, a lovely action in the water. I've got it rigged with a weighted weedless worm hook. You can use a weighted hook or a non-weighted hook like this one. With the weighted hook, it means it'll just work a little bit deeper, and because it's weedless, I'm not particularly concerned that it goes down into the weeds, because it's not going to snag. But as I say, if you can use it without the weighted hook and just an ordinary weedless hook, and then it would just work just under the surface. But even with the weighted, I mean, it's only a few grams the weight, it doesn't go too deep. It'll only go to a couple of feet on just a slow to medium retrieve. With regards to the hook, it's quite a wide-bodied soft plastic, so you need a hook with a wide gape to make sure that when the fish bites down on the hook, there's going to be plenty of hook exposed, hook point exposed. If the gape is a bit too narrow, then you're not going to get much of the hook exposed when the fish bites. I've got on here, this is a 5.0. You could actually use, for these 5-inch versions, you could actually use a 6.0, would be fine. Obviously they come in different colours. Got a darker colour there, and this white one. It's hard to get what it was when I last tried to get it. I had to actually import it from abroad. But there's plenty of suppliers in the UK that supply it, and it's a great soft plastic. Weedless soft plastic, as hopefully you'll see it catch bass. So this when I'm lure fishing from the shore for bass and I need weedless lures, this is the only one I use now. I use others on the Kayak, and as I said, I use it because it's such a great caster, and it's got a great action, and I only have to crank it in. Occasionally I'll just wind it in and maybe pause and let it drop, and then wind it in, a pause and retrieve. But mainly it's just a slow, gentle retrieve, and it's got that lovely slalom action. As regards the rod and reel and line to go with it, it's exactly the same as I use for my plug fishing from the shore for bass. Got my usual 8-foot 15 to 50 gram lure rod, my 4000 size spinning reel loaded with 20-pound braid, and then a couple of feet of 15-pound fluorocarbon just joined there with a double uni knot, and then just small links on the end to be able to clip the soft plastic on, or change colours if I want to. Okay, so I'll have a go and hopefully show you this weedless lure catching a bass. Try to show you now the action of this Fish Arrow SW, and like I said, it's got a nice slalom action there, just back and forth as you just slowly reel it in. So you don't have to impart any action to it. See that lovely slalom action? I mean, sometimes when I fish this, I usually fish it with a very slow retrieve. You don't need to have a fast retrieve with this lure to get that slalom action. But I sometimes try just pausing and letting it drop like that, and then reeling it up again, and then letting it drop, rather than just a straight crank. But mainly it's just a straight wind in with that lovely slalom action. So it's a great action. Here's a good example where weedless lures come into their own. If I was fishing here and casting a plug beyond that, I'd have a bit of a problem when I get to the boundary of that weed. But of course, with this weedless setup, it doesn't make any difference, because okay, I can't fish properly through that weed, but I can draw it, as you can see there, I can draw it across it with no snagging. But if that was a plug, as I say, I could fish it no problem beyond it and up to it, or I could fish along the side of it if I can get access to along the side of it, but I couldn't actually draw the lure across it. Just look at that again. So if I was drawing my plug in and then I get to this point, I've got a problem. But as I say, with this fish, with this weedless soft plastic, not a problem. Just I'm not going to catch. I'm not unlikely to catch unless there's a bass sitting right under that weed. Might pop up and get it, as the bass do in the States. But the point is, I can draw this across that and not get snagged up, and not lose my lure. So that's just one example where they really do come into their own. The other thing, of course, about weedless lures, they're not just for fishing in weed. You can fish them right into rock, and then again, this is just an example here of, we got some weed covered rock there. Now of course, if I was to throw a plug into that, you know, it's just going to get snagged. But with rocks, you can see that I can just draw it straight over the rocks, and it doesn't get snagged. So we're over rock and into rock there, and it's not going to get snagged. So apart from being really useful for fishing through weed, they are, of course, it's useful for fishing through rocks as well. Maybe when you got to go over a rock, and then the other side of the rock it drops down into a hole, and you never know, there could be a bass sitting in there. Although you can't see this spaghetti weed, it's sitting at the moment, we're about a couple of hours down to low water, but say strands of it lie literally on the surface, just at the point where you want to draw the lure over. And if I had a plug, I'd keep getting caught on it. When there's isolated strands of it now, the majority of it is dying back in mid-September, and by October it would have all, certainly mid-October, it would have all gone. But there's strands of it lying around, denser in some areas than others, and really annoying when you're trying to fish a plug, even a surface plug, and you keep getting caught with those strands of spaghetti weed. So of course not a problem with this weedless lure, just crank it straight over it. Little tip here for those of you that are fairly new to bass fishing. The area I'm fishing in is generally weedy. It's got a rocky, isolated rocks and a generally very weedy bottom. So it's got a lot of features. However, there are additional features, and if you can just see there, top of a rock that's starting to expose, it only exposes on the spring tides, and on big spring tides it exposes of course a lot more. Now it's always pays to try around features like that. Obviously any feature attracts fish. And the other great thing about this, using this weedless lure, if I was casting a plug now, I'd have to keep sort of fairly well to the left or to the right of that rock. However, with the weedless lure, I don't really have to worry about it. I can cast just to the right of that exposed bit and just to the left of that exposed bit, and sitting under there is probably rock, weed covered rock that's literally only a few inches under the surface. So always pays to try these little additional features. I mean, when you're casting, you want to cover as much ground as possible, but it always pays to try around features like that. Okay, I'm into a bass now on the weedless lure. Really banging hard, this one. Just goes to show that these weedless lures work. Nice little bass there on the fish arrow, and you can see there, no problem with the hooking mechanisms on these weedless soft plastics. Worked really well there. So there you go, it's another great lure, and really handy when you've got a situation like I've got at the moment with a lot of this spaghetti weed just below the surface, making it very, very difficult to fish it even with shallow diving plugs. Well, I'm going to put this back, although it's well over the minimum size limit. It measures 40 centimeters. So I'm going to let that one go. Weedless lures are well worth having in your tackle box for those occasions when plugs or other non-weedless lures are just not suitable. They make frustrating unfishable areas that could hold bass fishable. Most times I do not need them, but now having experimented with them and proved to myself they catch, I will always have them at hand. For those of you that have never tried weedless lure fishing for bass before, I hope you found that useful, and once again, many thanks for watching.